to you some questions. Okay, I hope you know the answers, or if not, okay, I will give you the answers. So this is just preliminary or to introduce E-Commerce Act of the Philippines. First question is this. Okay, what is the name of the virus that is said to have originated in the Philippines that brought the enactment of this law, of this special law? So year 2000 po ito. I don't know what age were you during the time, or baka wala pa kayo during that time, but technically this is the virus that led to the legislation of the E-Commerce Act of the Philippines. It was also made into a movie, and it was starred by Jericho Rosales. Any idea what virus this is? The Philippines was actually brought to the headlines and was known to internationally, globally for this particular virus. Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. If your answer is I love you virus, you are correct. This is the I love you virus. Okay. Next question. What is the numerical title of E-Commerce Act of the Philippines? Ano yung pangalan? Okay, numerical title ng batas na ito. Any idea? So clue, it starts with the Republic Act. Okay, ano kayang numero? Ito. Okay. 3, 2, 1. Okay. So for your information, the numerical title of the law is Republic Act 8792. 8792. Okay? Please note that down kasi minsan sa mga MCQs, ito lang naman yung pagpipilian, minsan tinatanong ano yung numerical title ng batas. Again, let me repeat, it's also known as Republic Act 8792. Okay, give me 3 countries. So the question is this. What countries, 3 countries other than the Philippines, so bago ang Pilipinas, legislated the e-commerce law? Sino o ano yung mga tatlong bansa who came ahead of the Philippines in legislating an e-commerce act, Electronic Commerce Act? May mga version sila. Sila yung mga nanguna bago ang Pilipinas. I guess this will be a wild guess, so you can write down 3 countries and let us see if by chance or by luck may matamaan kayo. 3 countries. So ano ang clue natin sa Pilipinas? Pilipinas tuloy. So Asia, I mean. They're all countries in Asia. Okay? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. So the other 3 countries that had legislated an electronic commerce version, are number 1, Malaysia, number 2, Singapore, and number 3, Korea. Okay? South Korea. Tapos sumunod tayo, Pilipinas. Okay? So this will be for your information for the purposes of the special law, E-Commerce Act of the Philippines. So let us now proceed to the discussion of the law. Ito. I guess I'm now presenting the lecture, in this way. So the first one will be an MCQ. So the question there is, what law recognizes the vital role of information and communications technology, ICT, information and communications technology in nation building, aimed at facilitating domestic and international dealings, transactions, arrangements, agreements, contracts, and exchanges, and storage of information through the utilization of electronic, optical, and similar medium. Okay, so you have to choose between the two. Okay, what is your answer? Obvious, no? The answer, of course, is Electronic Commerce Act. Again, it's Republic Act 8792, and it's not 7394 or the Consumer Act of the Philippines. For the 2022, si policy syllabus kasama na doon yung Consumer Act of the Philippines. So this is preliminary or to introduce you to this special law, na Consumer Act of the Philippines. But then again, our focus now for these purposes ng recording natin today is ECA or Electronic Commerce Act. Okay, ito po si Electronic Commerce Act. Ang Consumer Act of the Philippines, okay, declares that the policy of the state is to protect the interests of the consumer, to promote, okay, general welfare, and to establish standards for conduct for business and industry, to implement measures to achieve, among others, protection against deception, unfair and unconscionable sales acts and practices. Yan po yung state policy behind Consumer Act of the Philippines. Okay? So, did you know tayo? Did you know that, again, as we have mentioned a while back, the Philippines was the fourth country after Malaysia, Singapore, and Korea that legislated a law na e-commerce electronic act. Okay? Did you know also that ECA is also a part of the Philippines set of digital laws on digital safety alongside with, of course, you have intellectual property code, yung ating intellectual property code. So it's one of the set of digital laws on digital safety. Okay, another, did you know, ano bang ibig sabihin mo ng digital safety or digital security? Okay, so it would pertain to electronic precautions to guarantee safety. Okay, so in any society, there are individuals who would steal, deface, or disrupt other people. The same is true with digital commerce. Okay, and for our purposes of discussion, electronic commerce. Kaya, again, that's the importance of why we have this particular set of laws on digital safety or digital security. Okay, so sagot ulit natin dito for this slide. It's RA 8792. Okay. Take a look at this. Preliminary pa rin, introduction sa ating main discussion. So, ito, basahin natin ito. This is a photo that is shared, okay, from the net. Talks about oversharing. Sabi dito, your biggest security risk could be you. Okay, so reports of massive data breaches and hacked accounts are flooding the airwaves. Are you making it easier for criminals to steal your information? So avoid doing this, yung oversharing po ng inyong information, okay, for your own protection. Another, okay, on cybersecurity tips tayo, since we are talking about, okay, digital security, digital safety. First tip dyan, okay, is to double authenticate. And this is actually one of the principles that is used sa ating Electronic Commerce Act, double authentication. Kaya meron tayong usaping public keys, private keys, okay? And of course, the other tip is to secure your mobile devices. So, other than your password maybe or your passkey, ano pa yung mga ginagamit ninyo, face recognition, thumb recognition, di ba? Another tip, watch what you share online. So, bago ka mag-share, bago ka mag-like, okay, better discern whether that is worth uploading or sharing. Okay? Watch where you click, sabi dito sa number 4. At sa number 5 natin, security tips is don't just delete. Better destroy your hard drive o yung files mo mismo sa hard drive. Do not just delete. Kasi, of course, magagaling ngayon ang mga cyber hackers. You thought you have deleted it sa recycle bin mo, but they can still be retrieved, di ba? Okay, so out of this, possible cyber security tips that you may adopt and use to protect your own information, personal information, whether financial or non-financial information. Let's move on now. Okay, the law, E-Commerce Act. Okay, so these are some of the implementing rules and regulations, and each one says executive issuances to actually support the law. So remember that the law itself is legislated in 2000. So kailangan meron tayong mga rules and regulations din, okay, to enforce the law. So we have here, this is just some of them, okay? So mahaba po, marami pa. But we have EO, Executive Order number 264 here, okay, which establishes ITC, Information Technology and E-Commerce Council, okay? We have the implementing rules and regulations of ECA, okay, of July 13, 2000. We have a memorandum, okay, from the Supreme Court on the rules on electronic evidence of 2001. We also have a joint DTI, DOST Departmental Administrative Order, which provides for implementing rules and regulations for electronic authentication and electronic signatures. Okay? So imagine na itong mga rules na ito ay, take note, okay, from 2000, 2001, 2004, the offices, the concerned government agencies may have already come out with the most recent guidelines on the same subject matter. Okay. Ano pang meron tayo sa records natin? We also have of 2008, a joint DTI, DOH-DA, Department of Agriculture Administrative Order on the matter of rules and regulations for consumer protection in a transaction covered by the Consumer Act of the Philippines through electronic means. Kaya pasok pa rin po dyan, CRA 8792. Then you have one in 2009, a DTI department order which institutionalized an e-commerce unit in the DTI, okay, called as the e-commerce office. So we have such an office called an e-commerce office before the DTI. Bangko Sentral Pilipinas ng Pilipinas Circular Number, which gives us the guidelines governing the issuance of electronic money, the operations of electronic money issuers in the Philippines. So EMI, electronic money issuers. An executive order in 2009, okay, which institutionalized the certification scheme for digital signatures and directing the application of digital signatures in e-government services. So these are just some of implementing rules and regulations and related issuances. So the law has gone further. Okay, marami na pong changes, developments, improvements tungkol sa batas na ito. Okay, so let's start. True or false? Tingnan natin if you can guess it correctly. The Electronic Commerce Act penalizes acts in violations of the Consumer Act and other relevant or pertinent laws through transactions covered by or using electronic data messages or electronic documents. Is this one of the objectives or goals or functions of the ECA? True or false? What do you think? Can I give you 5 seconds? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ano sagot nila? Okay. If your answer is true, then you are correct. This is also a function of ECA. Okay. Electronic commerce. Okay. What do we mean by electronic commerce? So, electronic commerce is used to describe doing business over the internet. That's how easily we can understand the term electronic commerce. Okay, doing business over the internet. So according to the World Trade Organization or WTO, yung definition niya of e-commerce is the term electronic commerce is understood to mean the production, the distribution, marketing, sales, or delivery of goods and services by electronic means. So this is a WTO definition. Okay? The Alliance for Global Business, AGB, defines electronic commerce more broadly. Ano yung kanyang broad definition? It incorporates all value transactions involving the information, products, services, or payment via electronic networks. These communications as the medium through which goods and services of electronic value are designed, placed, advertised, cataloged, inventoried, purchased, or delivered. Okay? So electronic commerce is also known as electronic marketing. Okay? So since we're still in the discussion of electronic commerce as an introduction to the law, I think it's better for us also to take a look at the features of electronic commerce. Okay, so electronic commerce refers generally to all forms of transactions relating to commercial activities, okay, including both organization and individual that are based upon the processing and transmission of digitized data, including text, sound, and visual images. It may be interpreted differently by different people, but the distinctive features of e-commerce are that it extends beyond the boundaries of a single enterprise, and it can be applied to almost any type of business relationship. So e-commerce is the paperless exchange of routine business information using electronic data interchange or EDI and other technologies including email, e-bulletin boards, fax machine, and electronic transfer of cash. So yung electronic transfer of cash, pasok pa din po dito. Ano po yung advantages ng e-commerce? Okay, so some of the advantages would be, number 1, low entry cost. It would reduce, number 2, transaction costs. 3, access to the global market. 4, it would secure market share. Okay. 5, convenience. So, some of the advantages po ng e-commerce. A brief history of e-commerce, 1970s, meron tayong electronic fund transfers. We also have that, okay? Electronic fund transfers. These are used by the banking industry to exchange account information over secured networks. Late 1970s and early 1980s, nagkaroon po tayo ng electronic data interchange, EDI, okay, for e-commerce within companies naman to, within companies. These are used by businesses to transmit data from one business to another. Okay, so business to business, B2B. 1990s, the World Wide Web, in WWW, na alam natin ba lahat, on the internet, it provided easy-to-use technology for information publishing and dissemination. Okay, so it also led rather to cheaper to do business, so economies of scale yan. Okay, so it enabled diverse business activities. Okay, so economies of scope. Okay, so maraming klase pong kaganapan na nangyari sa mga kapanahonang ito, which would include Amazon, of course. Okay, we have Netscape. Okay, those are just examples. In 2000, we have the merger of AOL and Time Warner. Okay, 2000, it led to the loss of confidence, kaya dyan lumabas yung ating I Love You virus, okay, which was actually, of course, okay, a Philippine-made virus product ba? I don't know. Okay, so in the year 2000 also, dito na po medyo umusbong yung B2B. Kaya B2B, business to business, largest business. Okay, evolution po ng development ng how to do business via the internet. Okay, so what are products which are suitable for e-commerce? So the selling of commodity items. Okay, it also led to product shaping profile. May mga strong brand identity yan. Automobiles to online banking, insurance product. These are just examples of products and services that can be done electronically. Okay, so done with our brief introduction as to how relevant. I think this is a situationer. This is a situationer indeed for you to appreciate this special law, ECA, Electronic Commerce Act. I guess it's for better understanding of the law, kailangan pa rin natin pasadahan itong classification of electronic commerce, no? So may tatlo tayo ditong classification. We have inter-organizational o B2B, you heard me mention about that a while back. Intra-organizational within the business. Meron tayong consumer to business or C2B. Okay? So inter-organizational electronic commerce, yung una. So from the inter-organizational perspective, e-commerce facilitates the following business application: supplier management, okay? Electronic application help companies reduce the number of suppliers and facilitate business partnership by reducing purchase order processing costs and cycle times, and by increasing the number of purchase orders processed within fewer people. Inventory management din, pasok po yan sa inter-organizational. Kaya ano pa ang papasok sa inter-organizational? Distribution management. Kaya ano pa? Papasok din po dyan ang channel management. Electronic applications quickly disseminate information about changing operational conditions to trading partners. So technical product and pricing information that once required repeated telephone calls and countless labor hours can now be posted to electronic bulletin boards. Okay? Ano pa ang pwedeng pumasok po sa inter-organizational? Payment management. Okay? Kaya dyan papasok yung mga payment, electronic payment, cashless payment, electronic cashless payment. Okay, sa intra-organizational electronic commerce, ito yung within business. Ano po? Ito, the purpose of intra-organizational applications is to help a company maintain the relationships that are critical to delivering superior customer value. So how is this accomplished? By paying close attention to integrating various functions in the organization. From this perspective, intra-organizational e-commerce facilitates the following business applications such as work group communications. Okay? So, dyan papasok yung video conferencing, bulletin boards, okay? Electronic publishing. Dito din po papasok yan. What else? Salesforce productivity. Okay? So, let's now take a look at the last one, consumer to business e-commerce. Ano naman po ito? Okay? It electronically facilitates consumer to business transactions. So the customers learn about the products through electronic publishing, buy products with electronic cash and other security payment systems, and even have information about goods delivered over the network. So from the consumer's perspective, e-commerce facilitates the following economic transactions. Number one, social interactions. Two, personal finance management. Three, purchasing products and information. Okay? And ano bang ibig sabihin natin ng purchasing products and information? Example, electronic applications would enable consumers to find online information about existing and new product services. So yung consumer to business, siguro ang pinaka-example natin yan will be yung dalawang giants natin sa online e-commerce sa Pilipinas nowadays. So we have Shopee and of course you have their Lazada. Okay? Relate na tayo sa e-commerce. Okay? What about digital commerce? Anong difference po ng digital commerce sa e-commerce? Okay. As defined, ang digital commerce would refer to the ability for users to recognize that much of the economy is regulated online. It deals with the understanding of the dangers and benefits of online buying, using credit cards online, and so forth. As you can actually see, parang mas broader in scope ang digital commerce as when we compare it to e-commerce, no? So digital commerce, electronic buying and selling of goods. Okay? Technology users need to understand that a large share of the market economy is being done electronically. So legitimate and legal exchanges are occurring, but the buyer or seller needs to be aware of the issues associated with it. So it would include then developments on access devices such as debit and credit cards, bitcoins, and other online payment. Okay, so being aware of issues surrounding itong maybe surrounding e-commerce is also considered as part of digital commerce. Okay, so mas broader po in scope ang digital commerce as when compared to e-commerce. Electronic business. So the focus, it says here, okay, is on processes needed to facilitate e-commerce. So the focus is business to business. So transactions within boundaries of the business such as inventory control, HRM, as we have mentioned a while back. Also known as online business, using technology to improve the way of business. Yan po ang concern ng electronic business. Okay? So definition of terms tayo. Let's take a look at addressee. When we talk about addressee sa law, sa perspective ng batas na ito, ECA, we are referring to a person who is intended by the originator to receive the electronic data message or electronic document, but does not include the person acting as intermediary. So the addressee is not an intermediary. Okay? So with respect to that electronic data message or electronic document, a person intended by the originator to receive. Okay? Yan po si addressee. Originator. Okay, who is the originator? He is a person by whom or on whose benefit the electronic document purports to have been created, generated, and or sent. Okay, so person who purports to have created or generated. So from these keywords, verb na create, generate. Okay, it would not include a person acting as an intermediary with respect to that electronic document. Okay, pay close attention. Originator, addressee. So mentioned in the definitions of the two previous terms will be intermediary. So sino po si intermediary? The intermediary would refer to a person who, in behalf of another person and with respect to a particular electronic data message or electronic document, sends, receives, and or stores or provides other services in respect of that electronic data message or electronic document. So intermediaries, known also as electronic brokers. They are economic agents that stand between the parties of a contract or transaction, namely buyers and sellers, and perform functions necessary to the fulfillment of a contract. So most firms in the financial service sector, including banks, insurance companies, mutual funds, and venture capital firms, are intermediaries. Okay, other well-known forms of intermediaries are brokers, agents, traders, mediators. Okay? Yan si intermediary. So definitely intermediary will not be the addressee and will not be the originator. Service provider. Sino naman si service provider? So a provider of, number one, online services or network access or the operator facilities, therefore, including entities offering transmission, routing, or providing of connections for online communications, digital or otherwise, between or among points specified by a user or electronic documents of the user's choosing. Okay, yan po yan. Other than being this, okay, a service provider will also be a provider of, number 2, okay, necessary technical means by which electronic documents of an originator may be stored and made accessible to a designated or undesignated third party. So such service provider shall have no authority to modify or to alter the content of the electronic document received or to make any entry therein on behalf of the originator, addressee, or any third party unless they are specifically authorized to do so, and who shall retain the electronic document in accordance with the specific requests or as necessary for the purpose of performing the service it was engaged to perform. Okay? Computer naman po. Okay? Sabi dito, a computer is defined as any device or apparatus singly or interconnected which by electromechanical, optical, and or magnetic impulse or other means with the same function. Okay? It's a device that can receive, record, transmit, store, process, correlate, analyze, project, retrieve, and or produce what? Information, data, text, graphics, figures, voice, video, symbols, or other modes of expression, or perform any one or more of these functions. So, pag electronic naman, we actually relate it to what means email, pwedeng cellular phones, pwedeng instant messages. So, why the colors? Okay, the subject, ano ito? By what way? Anong ginagawa niya? Ito yung verb niya, at ito yung object niya. Okay? So that's how you will understand this definition of what a computer is under our law. Okay? Ano man po ang ICS or Information and Communication System? It is a system for generating, sending, receiving, storing, or otherwise processing electronic data messages or electronic documents, and would include, okay, the computer system or other similar device by or in which data is recorded or stored, and any procedures related to the recording or storage of EDM or electronic documents. Okay, so yan po si ICS, Information and Communication System. EDM, we've been mentioning EDM or electronic data messages in the definitions that we have been, the terms, okay, in an attempt to define the terms. Okay, so when we talk about EDM, we're referring to the information generated or the information that's sent or received or stored by electronic, optical, or similar means. Ganyan po kasimpleng ibig sabihin natin ng EDM. The information that is generated through this means, by this means. What about electronic document? Okay, so information or the representation of information, data, figures, symbols, or other modes of written expression described or however represented by which a right is established or an obligation is extinguished. Okay, so documents have something to do with being a proof of a particular agreement, which if received, recorded, transmitted, stored, processed, retrieved, or produced electronically. So, or by which maybe sa electronic document na ito, by which a fact may be proved and affirmed, which if received, recorded, transmitted, stored, processed, retrieved, or produced electronically. So, simply talks about a proof of an agreement that is processed or retrieved by electronic document. Okay. So, next term to be defined is electronic signature. So what is this? Sabi dito sa definition, it's a secret code which ensures and defends sensitive information that crosses over public channels into a form which is decipherable only with a matching electronic key. Okay? This is the technical definition of what an electronic signature is. So an example natin dito will be as obtaining a digital certificate. Okay? So a digital certificate, also known as SSL, service certificate, enables SSL, okay, or secure socket layer encryption on the web server. So SSL protects communication, so you can take credit card orders securely and ensure that hackers cannot eavesdrop on the conversation, okay, or on the chat, okay, electronic correspondence. So this is just an example of getting electronic signature through, of course, getting or obtaining a digital certificate. Okay. Salient features, let's go through the law now. and we attempt to talk about the salient features of 8792. So, of course, we know that 8792 was signed into law on June 14 of 2000. It took effect 5 days later, June 19, 2000. The implementing rules and regulations were adopted on July 13, 2000. So mabilis, di ba? Okay, from the time that it was signed to when it took effect, and then when the implementing rules and regulations came out. Then the law 8792 is considered to be a landmark legislation in the history of the Philippines. For what reason? It made the country a legitimate player in the global marketplace. Shall have the application to any kind of data message or document that is generated, sent, received, or stored by electronic, optical, or similar means, regardless of whether the activity or the transaction is commercial or non-commercial, private or public, or domestic or international. So regardless of, sabi natin, private ba yan o public ba yan na communication, domestic ba yan o international, okay, for as long as it would pertain to a data, message, or document that was generated electronically. Okay, so first salient feature, of course, would be, okay, number one, that it gives legal recognition to electronic data messages, electronic documents, and electronic signatures. Okay, so we recognize all this under the law. So electronically generated documents have the legal effect, validity, and enforceability as any other legal document. Electronic documents are recognized as the functional equivalent of a written document for evidentiary purposes. Electronic documents, signatures, and data messages are admissible in evidence in a legal proceeding depending upon their reliability, integrity, nature, and quality. For this purpose, the Supreme Court even promulgated an administrative matter on the rules on electronic evidence that took effect on August 1, 2001. Okay, so recognition of EDMs and EDIS and electronic signatures. What kind of recognition do we give to them? Legal recognition. Another salient feature of the law, which is actually embodied in Section 16 of the law, it allows the formation of contracts in electronic form. So it gives legal recognition to contracts and transactions in the form of electronic data messages or electronic documents carrying electronic or digital signatures. Okay, so electronic signatures can be any distinctive mark, characteristic, and or sound in electronic form that represents the identity of a person and logically associated with the electronic document. Digital signatures, on the other hand, are provided through a secret code known as electronic key, which secures and defends sensitive information that crosses over public channel into a form decipherable only with a matching electronic key, normally obtained from an internet security company. Okay, so yung distinction po ng digital signature versus electronic signature. Okay, yung electronic signature is enough already. Okay, that would allow the formation of contracts. So yung signature, technically, the same concept po tayo in ordinary contracts. It would actually indicate that there is consent. Kasi affirmation yan, confirmation, affirmation po yan ng mga parties to a particular contract. So both electronic and digital signatures are necessary to ensure the integrity, the reliability, and authenticity of electronic documents, particularly those that qualify as an electronic contract. Offer, acceptance, and other legal requisites for the formation and the consummation of the contracts may be expressed or executed by means of electronic data message or electronic documents. These contracts shall not be denied validity or enforceability simply because they are in electronic form. They are now recognized as the equivalent also of the traditional or the conventional contracts that we have. Okay? Yan. Another salient feature of the law will actually be that the law now makes banking transactions done through ATM, automatic teller machine, switching networks absolute once consummated, meaning it recognizes, remember that this is the year 2000, this means this particular ATM transactions may now be commonplace now, but before, okay, kakaiba yan, wala pa yan dati, okay, so it gave recognition to this manner of making banking transactions. Another salient feature of the law, under Section 24, parties are given the right to choose the type and the level of security methods that would suit their needs. Okay. Salient feature, under Sections 25 and 26, the law also provided for the mandate for electronic implementation of transport documents to facilitate carriage of goods. So, contract of carriage of goods can therefore be in the form of electronic documents under this special law, okay, subject to certain conditions. The law was also made applicable to actions related to contracts of carriage of goods, including, but not limited to, statements, declarations, or information about the goods confirmation on the delivery, loading, or receipt of the goods. Okay. Notices or communication on terms and conditions of contract, instructions to carrier, any loss of or damage to the goods, specific instructions for the release or delivery of goods, or any other notice about the performance of the contract. Okay. It also would include there, of course, granting, acquiring, renouncing, surrendering, transferring, or negotiating rights in goods, acquiring or transferring the rights and obligations under the contract. Okay, yan po yung laman ng Section 25-26 on this matter of the provision, the mandate for electronic implementation of transport documents to facilitate carriage of goods. Another salient feature under Section 27 of the law, it mandates the government to have the capability to do e-commerce. Okay, so e-commerce in government. Section 28, okay, feature, it mandates the RP Web to be implemented. The strategy intends to connect all government offices to the internet and provide universal access to the general public. This is, of course, yung RP Web na iba na po yung pangalan niya, and it's now within, of course, the control of the DIC, Department of Information and Communications Technology, DICT. Number 8, salient feature. Under Section 28, it made cable, broadcast, and wireless physical infrastructure within the activity of telecommunications. Number 9, it empowered the DTI to supervise the development of e-commerce in the country. So this is actually found under Section 29 of the law. DTI can also come with policies and regulations when needed to facilitate the growth of e-commerce in the country. Another salient feature, okay, it provided for guidelines as to when a service provider can be liable, made liable. Section 30 provision po ito. So internet service providers merely providing access to electronic data message or electronic documents in the ordinary course of its business are generally not subject to any civil or criminal liability. So only persons having legal right to the possession of electronic files can have access and make or authorize alterations thereof. Unless consent is given to another person or party, electronic key for identity and integrity is only available to the person or entity in lawful possession of the electronic key. Any person who has authority to access an electronic file or information is bound with rules on confidentiality of such file or information. So, yung provisions po ng batas na 8792 has to be taken, has to take into consideration the most recent legislations on confidentiality. So I would now be referring to yung implementing rules and regulations ng ating Data Privacy Act. Okay. Another salient feature under sections 31 to 32, the law now authorizes, for confidentiality purposes, the feature is that the law authorizes parties, authorities and parties with the legal right can only gain access to electronic documents, electronic data messages, and electronic signatures. Again, for purposes of confidentiality, the information obtained shall not be shared or conveyed to any other person other than these persons. Okay, Section 33 provision. Hacking or cracking, you have the definition on your notes, okay? And highlighted here is the fact that it would refer to unauthorized access, including the introduction of computer viruses. It's punishable by a fine from, we have that much, 100,000 pesos to maximum, commensurating to the damage. Okay. However, Ang batas sabi with imprisonment. So, hindi, unlike other laws na based on the discretion of the court and or yun, no, pwedeng fine and or imprisonment. Pero sabi sa batas natin sa 8792, ang kaakibat po o imposable penalty is this, okay, yung fine with. So, both po dapat yan. Imprisonment is from 6 months to 3 years. Okay? Again, let me repeat, the requirement is aside from the fine, a mandatory imprisonment term service is is mandatory under the law, required under the law to be imposed by the courts. True or false, tingnan natin ito. Republic Act 8792 or ECA of 2000 punishes, among others, hacking or cracking. This refers to unauthorized access into or interference in a computer system or server or information and communication system, or any access in order to corrupt, to alter, steal, to destroy using a computer or other similar information and communication devices without the knowledge and consent of the owner, resulting in the corruption, destruction, alteration, theft, or loss of electronic data messages or electronic documents. Hacking or cracking shall be punished with both a fine and imprisonment. Okay? So, after having defined it, it gives us the imposable penalty. Ito po yung kompletong provision ng batas. This is, of course, a true statement. Another salient feature of the law under Section 33 still, piracy through the use of telecommunication networks such as internet that infringes intellectual property rights is punishable. Ano po yung penalty o imposable penalty? Okay, both, parehas po, the same as that of hacking or cracking. Okay? And so, tinan natin to. After the salient features, let's talk about what the implementing rules and regulations provides for requirements for online disclosure of information about retailers, sellers, distributors, suppliers, or manufacturers. So, technically, itong mga retailers, sellers, distributors, suppliers, or manufacturers, okay, that are engaged in electronic commerce shall provide accurate, clear, and easily accessible information to identify themselves, which includes but not limited to the following information. Bigyan nila yung DTI or SEC registration nila. Okay? Other than that, they should also indicate the name of the owner or the proprietor of a retail establishment in case of a single proprietorship, and names of directors and other officers in case of a corporation. They should also be able to give the information on principal geographical address of the retailer, seller, distributor, supplier, manufacturer, and when applicable, of officers or agents in the Philippines. Ano pang kailangan i-disclose na information? Website, email address, or other electronic means of contact, telephone and fax numbers of the retailer, and when applicable, of its officer or agents in the Philippines. Other information, any relevant local or foreign government registration, license numbers such as but not limited to the LGU's permit to operate, tax identification number when applicable. Okay? So, yan po yung mga dagdag na requirement ng ating implementing rules and regulations. What else? Contact details about any business association or organization membership when applicable, if it is a part of this business association. Representative agent or agents in the Philippines for purposes of summons. Okay? What about requirements for online disclosure of information about the products or the services? Okay? So when we talk about retailers, sellers, distributors, suppliers, or manufacturers that are engaged again in electronic commerce, they should provide information about these things, about their products or services. Fair, accurate, clear, and easily accessible information describing the product or the service offered for sale, such as the nature, the quality, and the quantity thereof. Ano pang information po? Fair, accurate, clear, and accessible information. Okay? Easily accessible information, sufficient and able consumers to make an informed decision whether or not to enter into the transaction. Such information that allows consumers to maintain an adequate record of the information about the product or the service offered for sale. Siguro ini-imagine nyo yung mga information na nakukuha ninyo when you do online transactions with, let's say, for example, Shopee or Lazada. Okay? Sapat ba yung information na dinidisclose sa bawat produkto na ino-offer nila or service na ino-offer? Okay. So after, of course, yung mga required disclosure ng information about the retailer, the seller, okay, yung mismong participant, market participant at yung kanyang product at consumer, we also need, okay, there is also a need for online disclosure of information about the consumer transaction. Okay. So ano po yung requirement? Okay, they should provide the consumers with sufficient, clear, accurate, and easily accessible information about the terms and the conditions and the cost of the consumer transaction to enable consumers to make an informed decision. Ito yung purpose behind this additional requirement. So, anong kailangan ng i-disclose? Number one, the manner of providing information shall give consumers an adequate opportunity to review the terms and conditions and costs before entering into the consumer transaction and allow the consumers to retain a copy of the information. Take note, dalawa po ito na kailangang i-establish. They be able to retain it, okay? A copy of the same information. Other information, okay? The retailer, seller, distributor, supplier, manufacturer shall make available to consumers a clear and complete text of the relevant terms and conditions of the consumer transaction. So the consumer should be able to access and retain a record of the information by printing or electronic record. Okay? So the information shall include the price tag of the product or the service and the applicable currency. Okay? However applicable, costs not included in the price tag such as delivery, postage, handling, insurance, shipping charges, taxes, and specific reference to any other charges, customs fees, and other fees that may be imposed on or collected from the consumers shall be so stated also in the information. Okay? So, hindi lang yung price tag. Okay? All the other kinds of costs and charges that go along with this transaction, consumer transaction, need to be disclosed. Terms of delivery, of course, mandatory safety and healthcare warnings that the consumer would get at any physical or offline line point of sale. Details and conditions about termination, return, exchange, cancellation, and refunds. Details about any cooling off period or right of withdrawal. Okay? Any conditions about contract renewal or extension. Details about any available warranties and guarantees. Okay? Details about any after-sales service and any required quality or certification standards, marks, registration or license for consumer products issued by a relevant local and foreign government. So where a retailer, a seller, distributor, supplier, or manufacturer specifies an applicable law or jurisdiction to govern any contractual disputes, or a jurisdiction or forum where disputes must be determined, it shall clearly and conspicuously state that information at the earliest possible stage of the consumer's interaction with the retailer, seller, distributor, supplier, and manufacturer. Okay? So, yung conclusion po ng consumer transaction natin, were appropriate before concluding the purchase, the retailer, the seller, the distributor, supplier, and manufacturer shall provide by procedures consumers the opportunity to review and accept or reject the terms and conditions of the contract, to give the consumers the opportunity to identify precisely the product or the service consumers wish to purchase or avail, to give the consumer that opportunity to identify and correct any errors or modify the order, and again, give the consumers that opportunity to retain a record of any purchase, order, transaction, confirmation, acceptance of any offer they make. Okay? Retailers should promptly acknowledge the receipt of any order, confirmation, or acceptance received. Okay? Ganyan po kadetalye yung requirement po ng ating guidelines as to the application of the law. Enforcement and application of the law. As to original documents, ano ba ito? Where the law requires that a document be presented or retained in its original form, that requirement is met. That requirement is met by an electronic document or by an electronic data message if. Okay? Ano po ang requirement for us to meet that original document requirement na batas? Evidence aliunde. By evidence aliunde, and evidence aliunde means evidence other than the electronic data message itself or otherwise, or the electronic document. So other pieces of evidence, other proofs, bukod sa EDM, bukod sa ADI, electronic document, I mean. Okay? So for purpose of this particular paragraph, yung number 1, there exists a reliable assurance as to the integrity of the electronic document or electronic data message from the time when it was first generated in its final form, and such integrity is shown by evidence aliunde. Yung evidence aliunde, ulit, sinasabi natin evidence other than the EDM itself. Okay, so the criteria for assessing integrity, ang concern natin dito is integrity, yes, shall be whether the information has remained complete and unaltered, okay, hindi na bago, apart from the addition of any endorsement and any change which arises in the normal course of communication, siguro yung natatatakan niya na receive, mga ganun, okay, that would arise after the original sending, di ba, storage and display. The standard of reliability, okay, sa number 2, okay, the electronic document or electronic data message is capable of being displayed to the person whom it is presented. Yung reliability, ang ating naman pong standard dito, okay, shall be assessed in the light of the purpose for which the information was generated and in the light of all relevant circumstances. Okay? So, pwedeng i-display. So, yung mga email natin, pag in-open natin, nakikita na natin yung screen that's already capable of being displayed. Yes? Okay, as being able to print it without altering it, so already, okay, we already meet the requirements of this particular slide and provision of the law. True or false tayo. Okay, few more slides and we end the discussion on ECA. Okay, true or false, an electronic data message or an electronic document meeting and complying the requirements of the Electronic Commerce Act shall be the best evidence of the agreement and the transaction contained therein. Okay? Sapat bang maging ebidensya ito? Okay. True or false? Okay. True po ito for as long as, again, okay, there's integrity, we can rely on the EDM or the ED, it has not been tampered, altered, okay? Yun yung mga, it can be displayed to the person, okay, before whom it is being presented. True. Oh, remember, ano to? Okay. Okay, compliance of retailers. They should engage in electronic commerce with the data protection guidelines. So any retailer engaged in the business of electronic commerce with consumers shall comply with the requirements set forth in law, okay, on general principles for the protection of personal data. This is actually found under Section 4 of the law. Okay, Section 5 also, they should comply with voluntary accreditation. To comply with Section 6 on lawful access to personal data in an information and communication system, Section 7 on obligation of confidentiality, also comply with security of data provided for under applicable guidelines by concerned government agencies, lalo ngayon na meron din tayong Data Privacy Act, okay, to conform with. How do we address consumer complaints? So, retailers, suppliers, okay, manufacturers, distributors, okay, ano pang hindi natin na-mention, sellers, they shall set up and make operational an internal complaint handling mechanism for consumer complaints within a maximum period of 3 months. Okay, but the mechanism should not prejudice the rights of the consumers to seek legal redress. So kahit na meron tayong internal consumer protection complaints na na-establish within the business itself, it should not also hinder or stop the consumers from going to court, okay, if they want to. Yan po yung ibig sabihin yan. So, set up. This is a requirement. You set up an internal complaint handling mechanism. Okay. Next, there should be a procedure for filing a complaint with concerned implementing agencies. So, any person aggrieved by any transaction arising from the purchase of goods and services from a business establishment for violations of the Consumer Protection Act, okay, transacted by using EDM or electronic document as defined under ECA, may file such complaint before the concerned implementing agencies by furnishing a copy of the specific EDMs or electronic documents related to the transaction. Upon receipt of the formal written complaint, either through mail, personal delivery, or electronic data message or electronic documents, the concerned implementing agencies may commence an investigation based on said EDMs or electronic documents subject to the existing implementing rules and regulations of the Consumer Act of the Philippines as well as ECA, the Electronic Commerce Act of the Philippines. So any consumer located in the Philippines aggrieved by any consumer transaction through electronic means with a retailer, seller, distributor, supplier, manufacturer from another country, they may file their complaint in the Philippine Trade or Consular Office or embassy therein, or directly in the foreign government agency or regulator of the country where the retailer, seller, distributor, okay, supplier, manufacturer is located with the assistance of the Philippine government agency concerned. Okay, so pwede silang tulungan. Prescription. Okay, ang prescription period, ibig sabihin, it is within this period that you should do, okay, or avail of the remedies granted. Kasi pag hindi mo ginawa within this period, mapapaso na po yan at mawawalan ka ng right of action. Okay? So, a period of time is 2 years from the time the consumer transaction was consummated, or 2 years from deceptive or unfair or unconscionable act or practice was committed. Okay? And in case of hidden defects, 2 years from the discovery thereof. Okay? So, you have here the reckoning time at the reckoning, okay, period. Okay? Para kompleto yung prescriptive period natin. Saan natin sisimulan ang pagbibilang ng 2 taon. Okay? 2 years. Know your online world. Okay? We're now trying to finish the special law and how significant it is. Okay, so these are just guidelines or takeaways. Learn, okay, how yung mga new skills will help you explore the online world. Okay? Ngayon pa lang na nag-transfer na lahat ng mood sa online, no? By virtue of the effects of COVID-19, nararamdaman natin ito. Okay? Kaming mga medyo oldies, kailangang mag-aral kung paano gamitin itong mga applicable tech apps natin. Recognize online risks and how to manage them. Look out for suspicious emails and scams. Use secure websites for financial and retail services. Keep passwords secret, strong, and unique. Know how to report bullying behavior on social media sites. So these are things that you may want to know, okay, dito po sa online world to protect